like I was discussing, the three states of matter, the solids and liquid and gases, are interconvertible. And what is the difference? Why the same compound, example, water can exist as ice, water, and water vapor? Uh, it is the difference in the intermolecular force of attractions. In but before that, see, I'm showing you a liquid in this picture. And we are accustomed to so many liquids in our daily life, what we use. But this is a liquid which we won't use in our daily life. And this is liquid nitrogen. And nitrogen is a major constituent of atmosphere, but always in the gaseous form. But when I'm showing you the nitrogen as liquid form, so it automatically means that nitrogen can also be liquefied. The gas can also be liquefied. I'll show you one more gas, liquid oxygen. See, and the peculiarity of liquid oxygen is its blue color. Basically, when the oxygen is liquefied, it is blue. But in the atmosphere, about 20% of the atmosphere is oxygen. It is not blue, is it not? So it is not that only the liquids what we come across commonly in our real life, in our daily life, are only liquid. Of course, they are liquids. Some are gases, some are solids at room temperature. That means a compound can exist in solid, liquid, gaseous phase depending on the conditions of the pressure and temperature, basically. Anyways, so now I was talking about the intermolecular force of attraction. Look at a solid. The particles or the molecules of that solid, the atoms maybe of that solid, are so closely packed, right? They're densely packed. Whereas in liquid, they are moving a bit apart. But in case of a gas, they are too much apart. So this is the difference at the molecular level. Now you look at this illustration, that you see the difference here. In any given unit volume, in a liquid, there are so many molecules. Whereas in a gas, there are hardly any molecules. You just make a comparison. So when we talk about liquids and gases, we feel them, we use them, we touch them. But at the molecular level, there is a lot of difference in its packing of the particles or the intermolecular force of attraction. Solid, it is too much. Intermolecular force of attraction is highest. You see a liquid, there is still a degree of freedom in the liquid that the molecules are moving apart a bit. But see, in a gas, they are very far, very, very far. Now, we are interested in a reverse process. What is that? Condensation. So this liquid has to be converted in this to this. This gas has to be converted to this liquid. So even if we think in the lines of molecular level, what we have to do? We have to do something now. For example, given an opportunity, we have to condense a vapor into liquid. What should we do? This is the question. So start with this question: how is carbon dioxide liquefied? What can we do to liquefy carbon dioxide? Not just carbon dioxide, any gas can be liquefied by the application of pressure. This is called compression of the gas. So when the gas sample is compressed, what happens? Compression means decreasing the volume. So the same number of particles or same amount of the gas, because of compression, you are trying to pack in a smaller volume. So when you go on compressing, what would happen? At one point, the gas molecules are now so closely packed that they become liquid. The intermolecular force of attraction between the gas can now be equal to that of the liquid state. Therefore, they will start existing in the liquid phase. Is it not? So even our pictures here also showing that you have so less molecules. You try to apply pressure, bring all these molecules close and make it a liquid. So how to bring all these molecules close? By application of pressure. So compression, this is the best way of liquefying a gas, compression. Or you can also do one thing. you can also lower the temperature. For example, how do you liquefy water vapor? You don't compress it, right? At the ambient pressure, at the normal pressure, you just have to refrigerate it, bring down the temperature, it becomes liquid. So there are two ways now to liquefy a gas. One is compression. The second is lowering the temperature. And how much the temperature has to be lowered? That has to be lowered to its boiling point temperature. Is it not? So water vapor, at what temperature it will become liquid? Below 100 degrees Celsius. Why 100 degrees Celsius? It is boiling point. So all these liquids, gases have characteristic boiling points. So decrease the temperature to that boiling point, and then you can see liquefaction starting. But if we have discussed our vapor pressure concepts somewhere, maybe in some other classes, you know that the boiling point is a physical constant which has to be defined at two different variables. One is temperature and pressure. You know, water, when I say 100 degrees Celsius, it is boiling point. It doesn't mean it boils 100 degrees Celsius always, or maybe at any place. At mean sea level, it is 100 degrees Celsius. You check the boiling point of water at Tumkur, it is 96 point something. 96, okay, let it be 96 degrees Celsius. So why are we now telling about boiling point of is 100 degrees Celsius? Always, right from our school days, we are told like this, right? The boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. That is only at the mean sea level. Why? Because the atmospheric pressure has the effect on boiling point. Therefore, whatever the temperatures of the boiling points we are talking is not complete unless we specify pressure also. So liquids can boil at different temperatures depending on the temperature, the pressures of that places. Anyways, so what is the point now? The liquefaction, the vaporization, these processes are dependent on two quantities. One is the pressure, the other is the temperature. So either you can increase the pressure, compress it, or you decrease the temperature, a vapor has to be condensed. It appears very straightforward, right? Very simple thing what we are doing. But sometimes, anyways, this is what I was talking of. You take a gas, try to liquefy it. You can either lower the temperature or apply high pressures. This is okay, no problem. But let us consider we are liquefying two gases. One is carbon dioxide, the other is oxygen or nitrogen, exactly. So we are trying to liquefy using compression method. Carbon dioxide liquefies. You take carbon dioxide, compress it, it liquefies. But with oxygen, nitrogen, helium, such gases, you apply any amount of pressure. For example, at room temperature, 25 degrees Celsius, let us take it as room temperature. At 25 degrees Celsius, application of pressure liquefies carbon dioxide. There's no problem. But for oxygen gas, application of pressure doesn't liquefy it. You can increase the pressure to very high levels, still the liquefaction doesn't happen. So now we have a contradictions. What? With this new observation, what is the point? That all gases cannot be liquefied at room temperature at 25 degrees Celsius simply by the application of pressure. There are few gases which can be liquefied and few gases which cannot be liquefied. But it has been experimentally experienced that through experience we can see that even those gases which cannot be liquefied by the application of very high levels of pressure, they can be liquefied under one condition. And what is that condition? We have to pre-cool the gas. So what do you mean by pre-cooling? Before applying pressure, you have to cool the gas to a particular value of temperature. Only when you cool down to that temperature and then you can apply pressure, liquefy the gas. Therefore, if we do this experiment with a series of gases, we can construct a table of this temperature value. What temperature value? the temperature at which the gas has to be cooled before liquefaction by applying pressure. And this is a chart for about 5 or 6 gases. You see, water, what is the temperature to which it has to be cooled before liquefying? 374 degrees Celsius. It is too high, right? What is the ambient temperature here? About 25 degrees Celsius or 35, maximum 40 degrees Celsius in some very hot places. So even at 40 degrees Celsius, simply you can apply pressure and liquefy a gas and liquefy water. Very simple. Well, carbon dioxide, the temperature is not that high. It is not 374. It is 31.2 degrees Celsius. So what does it mean? If the carbon dioxide gas is at 31.2 degrees Celsius or below 31.2 degrees Celsius, it can be liquefied by the application of pressure. There is no requirement of cooling. But if it is above 31.2 degrees Celsius, for example, at 50 degrees Celsius, example, the same carbon dioxide cannot be liquefied. That means all gases have something called critical temperature value. So what is this critical temperature in terms of liquefaction of gases? It is the temperature to which the gases have to be cooled before liquefying them using high pressures. Now, look at the critical temperature values for different gases. For nitrogen, it is minus 146.9 degrees Celsius, too low. And look at for hydrogen, you can liquefy hydrogen even. Liquid hydrogen can be made, can be produced, but it requires a lot of technology is involved in this. Anyways, so hydrogen still it can be cooled. Now, hydrogen is so light a gas, right? Very light. So minus 240, almost minus 240 degrees Celsius, it has to be cooled. Only after cooling hydrogen to minus 240 degrees Celsius around, you can liquefy it again by application of pressure. Therefore, any gas can be liquefied. Why some gases are easy to liquefy? Example, water vapor, carbon dioxide, ammonia. See, ammonia's critical temperature is 132 degrees Celsius. Why some gases are easy to liquefy? Because their critical temperature is high. Why some gases are difficult? Because their critical temperature is very low. So you can always use this relationship. What is that? Higher the critical temperature, more easily the gas can be liquefied. So you look at even from this very table, you can always come up with this order: oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, helium. Anyways, all these 4 gases, the increasing critical temperature value is like this. Helium, oxygen has highest critical temperature value, so it can be easily liquefied. Of course, when I tell easily, it is always relative. When compared to oxygen and carbon dioxide can be easily liquefied. Compared to oxygen and nitrogen, oxygen can be easily liquefied. Why? The critical temperature of oxygen is more than critical temperature of nitrogen. So the critical temperature is actually, I mean, the name is very apt, very appropriate name they have given, critical temperature, because the value is so critical. If you don't cool the gas to this value, you cannot liquefy it. Therefore, all gases have a characteristic critical temperature value. Now, not just temperature, we can also extend this to other variables, thermodynamic variables like pressure and volume. Now, you know, which are those 3 important thermodynamic variables which we discuss, particularly when we're talking about gases: temperature, pressure, and volume. And these are the 3 variables in our real gas equation also. PV is equal to RT, where R is a constant, where PV and T are variables. So like we have described critical temperature, we can also describe critical pressure. So what is critical pressure? It's the critical pressure of a gas is the pressure exerted by the gas at critical temperature. Simple. What is the pressure of the gas at critical temperature? That is the critical pressure. What is the volume of the gas at critical temperature? That is the critical volume. So T is temperature. T with a subscript C, small c. I will show that in my later slides. Tc is a critical temperature. Like that, we can define three constants for a gas. Three constants for a gas: critical temperature, critical pressure, critical volume. And these three are togetherly called critical constants. Now, so these are all about some introduction to the liquefaction process. You know, uh, like we are talking about liquefaction process, you can be wondering, are we talking about something which is too much far from our daily applications? No, it is not. The gases, liquefaction or liquefied gases, we commonly use uh, in our daily life. The best example is our LPG itself, is it not? Liquefied petroleum gas. So what is LPG basically? If it is not liquefied, chemically, what is LPG? It is simply mixture of lower alkanes like propane, butane. And you know, this propane, butane are all gases. And if you simply fill those gases in cylinders and supply to homes, you will not get enough quantity. And you don't get even enough pressure to come out of the pipe and get lit. So these gases, propane, butane, these are all compressed under high pressure and then liquefied, filled into the cylinders. Okay. So whenever you see a gas cylinder at your domestic gas cylinders, cooking gas cylinders, think of liquefaction of gases. Not only just that. Maybe you have at least read or learned about this very unfortunate situation which was created some 3 or 4 months back. What was that? During the second wave of the COVID, there was a oxygen shortage crisis. Almost it was a crisis of oxygen shortage across country. So what were the patients looking for? What were the hospitals looking for? The oxygen cylinders. And the oxygen, how is it supplied to the hospitals? In the liquid form. So the oxygen is compressed or liquefied and then filled into cylinders and then transported to hospitals. That is where this whole crisis had very not very common, very strange dimensions. What was that? In fact, there was no shortage of production of oxygen in the country. Absolutely not. There was enough oxygen produced. But then why there was shortage of oxygen in the hospital? Because, see, when the oxygen is produced and transported, it has to be liquefied. And you know, when it is liquefied and transported, the oxygen has to be transported below its critical temperature value. So which is about minus 160, minus 170 degrees Celsius. We did not have enough vehicles with this cryogenic technology. What do you mean by cryogenic technology? The technology which deals with low temperature aspects. That is what cryogenic means. So we did not have these cryogenic vehicles. There were very few which were carrying that. Therefore, although there was supply of oxygen, the vehicles, transport vehicles which can transport oxygen holding it at very low temperature were not there. They were there, but large numbers were not there. And see, your production of oxygen can be increased at any point of time in the factories, but the transport cannot be increased because overnight you cannot manufacture new lorries, new vehicles to carry oxygen, is it not? Therefore, so these hospitals are very much dependent on liquid oxygen. So why did I give this example? That liquefaction is gases is not something Greek and Latin, which is done very only for the academic purpose or only for very sophisticated experiments. Not that. It affects our daily life also. It finds a lot of application in our daily life. LPG, liquid oxygen, even liquid nitrogen. So where do you find liquid nitrogen? Liquid nitrogen are found in these storehouses which store biological specimens, particularly. For example, stem cells. I hope you have heard of these stem cell banks, which have come up even in our country also. There are stem cell banks. So they collect stem cells when the babies are born, just born, and they preserve cells for their entire lifetime of the babies. Now, for another 100 years, they can preserve the stem cells. How do they preserve that? By storing the stem cells in liquid nitrogen temperature. So that is also there. Okay. Right. Anyways, now we will move on to a bit of physical chemistry of all the things we were talking about. Now, something like isotherms, right? So what are these isotherms? What do you mean by isotherm? Constant temperature. Therm means temperature, iso means constant. Isotherm. You also have adiabatic expansions, isothermal expansions, isothermal compressions. So isotherms are curves, graphs. So any graph should have at least two variables, right? When you are constructing an isotherm of a gas, it means that the variation of pressure and volume is recorded in constant temperature, under constant temperature of a gas, for a gas. That is an isotherm. So if you, for example, maintain a gas at 25 degrees Celsius and then see if you increase or decrease the pressure, what is the volume change? Record all those changes and plot in the form of a graph. That becomes an isotherm. Now, you can also do this at different temperatures, some at 35 degrees Celsius, example, or 40 degrees Celsius. What the thing? Throughout the experiment, the temperature has to remain constant. How the pressure and the volumes vary, that you have to see, record, and plot in the form of a graph. That becomes isotherm curves. So why are we suddenly talking about these isotherms in liquefaction of gases? I will explain that later. But even for purposes not for liquefaction, you can construct an isotherm. You can also construct an isotherm of a real gas. An ideal gas. Example. It looks like this. So what is an ideal gas? Which obeys our ideal gas law, PV is equal to RT. And now PV is equal to RT in an isotherm. R is constant, T is also constant. The variables are only P and V. So if you construct an isotherm for an ideal gas, it looks like this. So almost the curve, the line is sloping downwards like this. It's simply sloping downwards like this. So this is an isotherm. Now, you can also construct one more line at a different temperature, but maintain that constant temperature and see how the pressure and volume varies. Okay, fine. Now, what happens if the equation is followed, ideal gas equation is followed, PV is equal to RT, you get a perfect line, almost like this, very smooth declining line with negative slope. But for real gases, all gases are not behaving ideally. They behave not like a non-ideal gases. And we also have an equation to capture the behavior of non-ideal gases. That is the real gas equation, not the ideal gas equation. PV is equal to RT is the ideal gas equation. We find very few examples. We find very few practical examples which follow ideal gases, which obey ideal gas law. But there are many gases which are real. So we have even made correction to our ideal gas and got a real gas equation also. So if you construct an isotherm for a real gas, it doesn't look like this. There will be a lot of deviation in this line. The line would have probably gone very much inside. The slope is not uniform, or it can have a convex shape, concave shape, whatever shape, depending on the nature of the gas. So what is the first use of the isotherm? Simply by constructing an isotherm at different temperature, you can see whether the gas behavior is ideal or not. That's the first point. Second point, the same gas can behave as ideal gas at some temperature and non-ideal at other temperatures. That is also there. So isotherms give you very valuable information about the behavior of gases. That's the point. Now, The concept of isotherms we will use and study a gas, carbon dioxide. This was actually done by Andreev, scientist by name Andreev, and therefore the experiment is called Andrews isotherm of carbon dioxide. So what is an isotherm? Isotherm is a curve obtained by maintaining a gas at constant temperature and recording the variation in pressure and volume. That's an isotherm. So when Andrew did this experiment on carbon dioxide, anyways, I have only few more minutes. So please send your names in the chat box for the attendance. I'll just continue with my explanation. Send your names in the chat box. Okay. Yeah, please send your names. Fine. Now, if a gas, you see, carbon dioxide at more than 40 degrees Celsius temperatures. Now, you see, in the same graph, I have shown you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 isotherms. Isotherm at a higher temperature, isotherm at lower temperatures also. So at high temperature, more than 40 degrees Celsius. Okay, let us understand this isotherm now. At more than 40 degrees Celsius, maybe 45 degrees Celsius, the behavior of carbon dioxide is almost ideal. You see this curve, a very smooth declining slope, comparable to a curve here, right? Comparable to the curve here. So at 40 degrees Celsius and more, carbon dioxide behaves as an ideal gas. See, there is one more thing here. Ideal gas cannot be liquefied. Okay, ideal gases cannot be liquefied. Only real gases can be liquefied. So if carbon dioxide can be liquefied, like what we discussed in our previous slides, it should not be ideal. It should behave non-ideally, at least at some temperatures. But as you decrease the temperature, maybe at about 31 degrees Celsius, you see the curve has a small bend in its curvature. Has a small curvature. It's called kink. Has a small kink in it. The curve has a small kink. So that means, I mean, you just concentrate only on this curve. So how is the shape of the curve? Definitely not ideal. Is it not? It is coming down almost like an ideal, but then becoming a bit horizontal and then coming down. So these deviations amount to non-idealness, amount to non-ideal behavior of the gas. So carbon dioxide starts behaving like a non-ideal gas, real gas, at temperature 31 degrees Celsius and low. And if you further decrease the temperature and record the isotherm, you see the shape of the lines become too much deviated from the higher temperature isotherms. You see this curve, it's coming down and becoming horizontal, then going down again. Further lower temperature, it comes down, almost same thing. So from this temperature onwards, 31 degrees Celsius, below 31 degrees Celsius, the shape of the curve will always be like this. You have one more curve, you can have one more curve. It's always like this. The shape of the curve is always like this. So now we have to account for these shapes. Okay. This is called interpretation of Andrews isotherms. You see this curve. When the curve starts becoming horizontal to the x-axis, when an isotherm starts behaving horizontal, there is a region in the curve which is horizontal to the x-axis. That region means what? Means, okay, example here. So now, how to interpret this horizontal line in the curve? You see the pressure. For the same pressure, it has a range of volume, a big range of volume. What happens when the gas liquefies, there is a sudden drop in the volume. If you take, for example, 1 kg of gas and 1 kg of liquid, the volume occupied by 1 kg of gas is huge compared to volume occupied by 1 kg of the same substance in the liquid form. Okay, so when the gas starts to liquefy, the volume falls too much. Okay, so you see this, the volume falls too much. See this. Now let us track the curve from the volumes side, volumes direction. So what's happening on the x-axis? If you go in this direction, volume is increasing. If you go in the reverse direction, volume is decreasing. So when you go in this direction, the volume is decreasing. So if the volume has to decrease, what you have to do, the pressure has to be increased. That's what's happening here. The pressure is increasing. You see, the line is going upwards. That means pressure is increasing. So the volume is decreasing. But at the point 1 to point 2, you see, there is massive decrease in volume at this pressure. So from 1 to 2, suddenly the volume decreases too much. So what does this 1 to 2 represent? Region of the curve where liquefaction has happened. Okay, so you see at much below temperatures, what's happening? The gas starts to become liquid at much lower pressure itself. As you cool it. So as you cool it more and more, you can achieve the liquefaction at lower and lower pressures. That is very important. And this is the critical point. So what is this critical point? This isotherm is at 31 degrees Celsius. Isotherm at 31 degrees Celsius will have an horizontal region in its curve. What temperature that horizontal region is coming? 31 degrees Celsius. That's the critical temperature. You see at 40 degrees Celsius, there is no horizontal region. So at 48 degrees Celsius, you cannot liquefy this gas. Okay. So this is how Andrews isotherms have to be interpreted. It's the usefulness of isotherms. Of course, Andrews isotherm is only for carbon dioxide.